Gopichana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vana Chari Jamunatira Vana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Jaya Radha, Jaya Radha, Jaya Radha, Jaya Sri Radha. Jaya Radha, Jaya Radha, Jaya Radha, Jaya Sri Radha. Jaya Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva, Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva. Jaya Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva, Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Bol, Hari Bol. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa. Parivrajacharya Asto Saraswatat Sissimad Divine Grace. Srila Abhacharya Navendra Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa. Parivrajacharya Asto Saraswatat Sissimad His Divine Grace. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavendra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Si Kahao Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Si Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Si Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Sri Radha Krishna Gopal Gopinath Syama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Sri Jagannapuri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Srimati Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Our glories to the assembled devotees. Our glories to the assembled devotees. Our glories to the assembled devotees. Our glories to Sisi Gauranga Ranga. Oh, thank you. Magyamachimirandasya Gyanajanansalakaya Sakshuram Militam Jena Tismai Sigurve Namaha Sichetayam Manovistam Stafitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantika Vanchakalpataribhya Cha Kripa Sundabhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Itinam Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sonyavadi Pasatya Dasatari Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Si Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. So you're welcome to this morning class right here in Mayapur. Today is the disappearance of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, correct? So, we will be discussing some things about this Siddha Baba, Jagannath Babaji. So first, we'd like to have a little background about Babaji. Babaji is a Nitya Siddha. In Krishna's pastimes, he was Rasika Manjari. So he's always been a perfected soul, and his appearance and disappearance anywhere in the true world is a cause of glory. And therefore, we have the honor to be able to pray to him, because he will not discriminate whether one is a serious devotee or is not a serious devotee. We discriminate, but he doesn't. He will not discriminate, because he knows the challenges of the material world. So we find that when he was on the planet, he had a schedule where he lives in Vrindavan, and he also does some preaching projects in Navadvip. Now he took his initiation from Madhusudan Babaji. That is his, he took his Paramahamsa Vesha from Madhusudan Babaji. Madhusudan Babaji, I think, is a disciple, a grad disciple of one of the major authors of the Vedanta, of commentaries of the commentators of the Bhakti, of the Vedanta Sutra. So we find that he is no other person than a Manjari, an eternal associate of Lord Krishna. And when the eternal associates of Lord Krishna, even when they do appear on the planet to teach, they may not do the same thing. And that is exactly the case of Jagannath Das Babaji. In fact, he lived a very strict system, a strict diet system. In fact, it mentioned that during the Kartik, some of the biographers, they mentioned that during the Kartik, first month he will only eat 4 bananas. And second month he will only eat some guava. So, like that, we'll find that he is highly exemplary in terms of showing us how to be regulated in devotional service. He had many disciples, unlike Gorakishore Das Babaji. Gorakishore Das Babaji had only one disciple. Who knows who that is? Huh? Bhaktisiddhanta. But the biographers of Jagannath Das Babaji say he had many disciples. The idea of having many disciples was not to make a show, but to be able to inject the disciples with Krishna Prema, because he was a personification of Krishna Prema. But he's a Babaji, and sometimes even his personal assistant got confused about the way he deals with things. For instance, he allows some dogs to come and associate with him and eat with him. Dogs, okay. We don't allow dogs to see even the food that the pure devotee eats, or the food that is going to be offered to the deities. But here is Jagannath Das Babaji. And when his personal assistant, who knows his name? Anybody? Bihari. I'm sorry. As a professional teacher, I have to also pose some questions. So I'm not really going to follow all the format of someone simply just, outpouring some things from his encephalon, but, when it's a little bit, from my teaching experience, I have a master's in education and philosophy and a PhD in applied management and decision sciences. So what I do is not going to be all through the traditional system where someone simply, outpours all that he has accumulated, and then at the end say question and answers. So sometimes I'll put up some, questions across some to create some thinking process. So yeah, Babaji created some type of confusion to say in the mind of Bihari. So when he allowed all these dogs to come and eat right from his plate, so Bihari will chase the dogs away. And he said, if you're chasing the dogs away, then I'm not going to eat. What is this rationale? Whatever we do, there should be a rationale. What is the motivation? In ordinary dealings, we say, what is the motivation? In research, we say, what is the rationale? You're doing this research. What is the rationale? What do you hope to achieve? So you're doing this. You're allowing dogs to come and eat with you, come and eat from your plate, confusing the devotees. And he was very expert at confusing devotees. I remember one incident in Vrindavan. He went to beg roti from a street sweeper. From a street sweeper. And so the high-class spiritualists in Vrindavan, they came on his case. He said, you want to spoil the old tradition. You cannot do this. So his response to them was, the daughters of Vrindavan, even Lord Brahma, wants to take birth as the daughters of Vrindavan. And this sweeper is associating with the daughters of Vrindavan. He is rolling on the daughters of Vrindavan. He is bathing himself with the daughters of Vrindavan. So he is more advanced, spiritually speaking, he is more advanced than anyone else. So why you say, I should not associate with him? So he defeated, the people who were agitating, these great devotees who were agitating for him to have a normal, quote, a normal, Paramahamsa lifestyle. On one occasion, someone had come to beg, to solicit for alms. And he comes there and he refused to go. He just decided to be by the corner and be fasting. He wanted that Babaji should give him something, should give him some alms. Some beggars, they are very stubborn. So even in the holy dam, there are some of these some of these mendicants that they target somebody, and if you don't give them something, they don't go away. So he kept performing this austerity of fasting and hanging out by Babaji's residence. And so the charity, the donation that he gave to this mendicant, to this beggar, he tore his couping. And he gave a part to him. So, if someone comes to beg for money or beg for food, and you're giving him coupons, what is he going to do with it? But this is Jagannath Das Babaji. So he lived a very unique spiritual life. But he was a highly elevated practitioner. Yes, he had many disciples, but even his teachings, we cannot take it today. Most of his teachings, we cannot take it today. ISKCON cannot take it today. And basically, one of his premises, one of his basic points is that he instructed his disciples. You cannot, I think mainly they were men, or brahmacharis or trying to be brahmacharis. So he instructed them in terms of association. You cannot associate with women. You cannot associate also with men who are associating with women. And you cannot associate with men who are associating with men who are associating with women. That's why I said that, his teachings, ISKCON, we cannot take it. we will not be able to absorb it. So, but, he has a very good propaganda, and his argument regarding worship is that the most useful worship is the worship of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda. Because they didn't mind who is who. They just distributed the mercy. But Lord Krishna was like, an administrator of justice. And so, because Lord Krishna is an administrator of justice, he is too much into, rules and regulations. You do this, you're punished. And that is also one of the reasons why people don't come to Krishna consciousness and immediately they want to go and worship a motif of Krishna. I remember in Washington, D.C., I have restricted some of my mentees from I remember one of them is a professor and a major in the U.S. Army, but then he has this ardent desire to worship big motif of Lord Ramachandra and Sita. I said, no way. I said, you cannot do this because you don't have the time. Imagine when you're a professor and a major in the U.S. Army. Where's the time? So, we need people who have to guide us in terms of even our spiritual desires. Is it something practical? So, according to Jagannath Das Babaji, Lord Chaitanya freely gave this Krishna prema. He broke the door, the locked door of Krishna prema. He broke it open. If it is modern day, they will say breaking an entry. But Lord Chaitanya did that, and he allowed the mercy to flow. So Jagannath Das Babaji, he took great recognitions of this, and he hailed Lord Chaitanya. In fact, in one of his songs, he was praising Nitai. He was saying, the song implied, Nitai, what type of mantra you have given? Because the pure devotees, the chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, they have different experience. So he was asking, in his song he was asking, Lord Nityananda, what type of mantra have you given? You keep in mind that he lived for over 140 years. Have you seen someone recently who lived for 100 years? 120 years? 130 years? Jagannath Das Babaji lived for over 140 years. In fact, his autobiographers mentioned that at some point in time, whether on 100 and plus years, this is his leads. You have to get people to pull it out before he is able to offer Tulsi to his Giriraj. And when he was really old, he was bent like a curve, and he was being carried in a basket by Bihari, personal assistant. So sometimes people think to be a personal assistant is a cheap thing. You have to really understand that it's a very difficult service. Sometimes you have to become like a nurse to clean up the feces of the spiritual master. And so, Jagannath Das Babaji, although he was pretty old and couldn't move, but when he hears kirtan, he springs up from that basket. He springs up from that basket. So the kirtan is what really intoxicates him. He sings, even his japa, he chants loudly. And kirtan, he chants loudly. So you remember that during the discovery of the Yoga Pit, when he was taken to that area, he identified the exact place. So Krishna had endowed him with mystic siddhis. So I'll give you an example. One time, Bihari had kept some 12 rupees aside to do some service for Jagannath Das Babaji. He was the one in charge collecting donations. He's an old saintly person, almost blind, so he was not really functional. So Bihari kept 12 rupees aside. Not that he wanted to steal it, to use it to do some service for the Siddha Baba. But then Babaji Maharaj, he asked Bihari, how much money do we have? How much money do we have? So Bihari, he mentioned the amount that he has, excluding the 12 rupees. So he said, what about the 12 rupees? What about the 12 rupees? I mean, These perfected souls, they have what we call clairvoyance. They have attained some clairvoyance. I remember also the case of Gorakishore Das Babaji. He was in Kulia, here in Navadvip. And in the night, he was chanting late in the night. He was chanting japa late in the night. And all of a sudden, he jumped up and said, "You see? Can you see? Can you see? Some professional Bhagavad reciter has gone to defile one widow who was maintaining very strict vows." And that was in Padna district in Bangladesh. Over how many thousands of miles from Navadvip to that place. Then right in Navadvip, he saw what was going on. And he was speaking as if it's happening right before him. You want to get those type of powers? If Krishna sees that that it will be useful for your devotion to him, for your service to him, yes, he will endow you. But there are so many, there are 8 different types of mystic cities. Again, Lord Krishna mentions that they distract significantly from the path of devotion. So we don't really exclusively or separately want to acquire those cities to be able to aggrandize our sensory modalities. But the pure devotees, some of them are endowed with these potentials, with these cities. So Jagannath Das Babaji was very clairvoyant. And he wanted his disciples to worship Lord Chaitanya, Jaya Sachinandana, Jaya Sachinandana. He emphasized that his worship is more useful to us because he will not take into account any offense. That's the reason why we have Panchatattva here. Everyone cannot worship Radha, Madhava, and the Astasakis because they take into account our offenses. For Panchatattva, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, no. Even Lord Nityananda is more merciful than Lord Chaitanya. So in Kali Yoga, this is very good for us because we don't have that spiritual strength to be able to maintain spiritual sanity in our devotional service. So the Panchatattva is there, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they are there to be able to help us to pave the way through and to minimize our offenses. So Jagannath Das Babaji, he was such a wonderful saint. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he receives instructions from Jagannath Das Babaji. Antithetically, Gorakishore Das Babaji, he goes to receive instructions, or he goes for Bhaktivinoda readings and theological discourses. So these 3 people, they are like a link. One is receiving mercy from this way, the other one is receiving mercy from the other way. One is giving mercy in this way, and then he is receiving mercy from this other way. So the process of devotional service is the process of mercy giving. Even for these great souls, Siddha Babas, Nitya Siddhas, when they come, they take shelter of someone. So Jagannath Das Babaji, he is Rasika Manjari. Was there any need for shelter? But this is our tradition. And sometimes we hear people say, well, I don't need the guru. Prabhupada is just enough. Did you see Prabhupada? Did you meet him? So, we see how these acharyas have set a very good example for us. But they lead very powerful and strict devotional lives. All of them, they did not chant 16 rounds. They did not chant 16 rounds. Gorakeswar's Das Babaji chants all through the night. Jagannath Das Babaji chants all through the day, all through the night. So, Christian Prema is not that so cheap. And therefore, we have to understand that. When we chant some few rounds and then we dump our beads, I've finished my rounds. Okay, you finished with Krishna? They never finished their rounds. Jagannath Das Babaji never finished his rounds. Gorakeswar's Das Babaji never finished his rounds. Bhaktivinoda Thakur never finished his rounds. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati never finished his rounds. So let's see how we can grow. In America, there's this saying, you have to grow up. Yes, so today is a very auspicious day. We can take advantage. We should pray to Jagannath Das Babaji to help us to grow in our spiritual life, to bless us with the holy names. Because we need mercy. We need the blessings of the acharyas. Not only the blessings of the acharyas, we need the blessings of the devotees around us. So, because we live in a community means what? Is etymologically, community comes from two words, commune and unity. Commune means empathic communication. And then empathic communication unifies the people. If we are saying something, we have to think about, is it something that is going to help to unify? Is it something that is going to help to consolidate our relationship? So Jagannath Das Babaji, he was a personality that helped to unite the Vaishnavas, that helped to upgrade the standard of the Vaishnavas by his own personal example. So we can pray for his blessings. Prayer works. We should not hesitate to beg for the mercy, especially today. Yes, any comments or questions? Yes, Mataji.
Just a couple of seconds ago, you mentioned that I have read them, so I forget. Anyway, city devotees at 5 Baba Kishore, Gaurav Kishore, and 4 others, they never finish their rounds.
Yeah.
Shall I repeat it?
Yeah.
You just mentioned that Sri. Hello, Sidhu. You just mentioned that Sri advanced devotees, among them Gaura Baba Kishore or something. Anyway, the names I don't remind, as I have been too long unconscious. Anyway, you said they never finish their rounds.
Yeah.
What do you mean by they never finish their rounds?
Oh. Which ancestors?
I have to finish my rounds. I think so. Everyone has to.
Yeah. When I say finish the rounds means they don't chant some rounds, say 16 rounds, 32 rounds, and then they end their day with their connection with Krishna in terms of calling Krishna on the phone. The chanting, Prabhupada mentions 16 is minimum. So these very advanced souls, they always having Krishna dancing on their lips. It's because of the practice of chanting constantly. In fact, Jagannath Das Babaji, that was one of his instructions to his disciples. He said they should chant Gaura's name constantly. 16 rounds just helps us to become involved in the thinking process, in connection process with Krishna. But if we really want to become, if we really want to expedite our advancement, we have to learn to be able to follow the example of these great acharyas and increase the quantity and quality of our devotion, especially with the chanting. See, we have so much of time during the day, but if we say, I chanted my 16 rounds, and then the rest of the period, I go to sleep, or I go to pick up my phone and I talk for 3 hours or 2 hours. In America, people, we talk for very long hours on the phone. So, we have to be conscious about time. Krishna mentions in the Gita that he is time, the destroyer of the worlds. So, if we have a focus on the understanding that Prabhupada said the 16 rounds is minimum. In fact, in 26 Second Avenue, when Prabhupada, when devotees were asking, first initiation program, when was announced, and devotees were asking, what is our commitment? And Prabhupada, mentioned that you have to chant a number of rounds. He said, how many? 64 rounds. They say, this is America. They say no. They say they cannot. One thing good with America is that people are very vocal. Even women or children, they are vocal. They don't hide their feelings. So when Prabhupada said that, they said, we cannot do it. So Prabhupada reduced it to 32. And then they still said, no, it's still too much. We cannot do it. And then Prabhupada said, 16, minimum. So, 16 is minimum. Constantly being engaged in devotional service. The chanting, for instance, we can do it. If even we are cooking, we can be chanting. We are walking, we can be chanting. The thing is that we should practice how to become Krishna conscious. The perfected soul, man mana bhava bhakt, mam yazim, mam namaskuru. Always think of me. He didn't say think of me for 2 hours. Or 1 hour, 30 minutes, or 1 hour, 50 minutes. So that is that's the meaning of, that's the undertone of that statement, okay? It's clear? All right, thank you for your concern and your question. Any other comments or questions? Okay.
What is the rationale of the
That's a good question. You see, I know the case of Gorakishore Das Babaji, for instance. People used to come to him all the time, and then one lady, she's the wife of the owner of what do you call it? The place where they keep cows. What do you call it? Yeah, in Navadvip, big one in those days. So the wife came to offer to Gorakishore Das Babaji that, can we make you a cottage? A cottage. Gorakishore Das Babaji that, he told her that, I don't need it. My problem is that, people come to bother me all the time. So if I got a cottage, then it will increase my problem. Rather, get me your latrine. Let me use that for japa. When I'm there, people are not going to come anyway. What's the reason? To have their focus on Krishna. They don't... See, a perfected soul, people, we go to them all the time. But we don't also consider that they have to be available for Krishna. They have to connect with Krishna. They want to do that. That is their taste. That is their juice. But we don't allow them to do that. And so they devise this other type of external means where people get confused about their behavior. And people become distracted. And they just act just naturally. Sometimes they act like, children. So the whole idea is, you see, when you have a very good character, you have very good friends, many friends. I remember I was in Delhi one time, for some time, and one of my friends and her husband, they said, Amanda, can we arrange a program for you in a guest house, in a guest room? I said, no, I don't need it. She said, why? Other Swamis, we do this for them. I said, I'm not other Swamis, I'm Bhakti Vasudeva Swami. She asked me to explain the reason why I'm objecting. I said, see, in this temple, see, I'm a scholar. I need time for research. I need time to do my sadhana. In this temple, I have you and your husband very close to me. And you can come and knock on my door at any time. If I have 2 or 3 people like you in Delhi, I'm in trouble. She busted out laughing. She said, okay, now she understood. Yeah, so, some people, like, I'm also somebody, I don't want crowd around me. And so some people, sometimes they accuse me that, why are you living a secluded life? See, when my type of service demands that, I need time to be able to think about a particular research project, to develop ideas, to generate research questions and, plan my works accordingly. Now, if I have too many people around me who are just going to be talking, talking and complaining and this, I will not be able to fulfill the order of my spiritual master. So that is exactly what happens with these Paramahamsas. We go to bother them all the time, and so sometimes some of them adopt, avadutta status, avadutta mood. And we don't want to associate with avaduttas. Even when Nityananda was ordered to marry, he went to meet, what is his name? Suryadas, for his daughter for marriage. And then Suryadas said, you're an avadut. He said, you're an avadut. In other words, how can I give my daughter to an avadut? So it keeps people, it allows them to be able to be with Krishna, instead of being distracted by our programs and complaints. Does it make some sense? All right. Any other comment? I have 1 minute or so. I don't want to just run away so that... But if there's no other comment or questions, we can adjourn the meeting. Okay, someone is raising their hand there.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, thank you very much. But Maharaj, what I am going to ask, maybe it will be, I don't know if it is appropriate or not, but please forgive me. Like in your lecture, in the middle you said, in ISKCON we cannot apply this.
Huh?
In middle of the lecture, you said about something about Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, that we cannot apply in this ISKCON. And then again you said something that we cannot apply in this in ISKCON. Then you said that 16 round is not enough. But when we hear Prabhupada lectures, and even yesterday, His Grace Mohan Rupa Prabhu was giving an pastime of Srila Prabhupada, that some of his disciples asked that we have to follow some Brajavasi to. This was a discussion about Ragatmika Bhakti and Ragunaga Bhakti something. So Mohan Rupa Prabhu told that one of his Prabhupada disciples said that we cannot go back to Godhead by chanting 16 round or something like that.
You cannot do what?
We cannot go back to Godhead by chanting 16 rounds. As you also said that 16 round is like a beginning. Prabhupada said this is minimum. But Prabhupada said in that pastime, I am the Brajavasi, you follow me. Chant 16 round attentively and follow 4 regulative principle and do whatever service you have been given. I will take you back home to Godhead. So yeah. I just want, maybe you can make it clear about this.
Yeah, I'm talking about basically what we need to understand and what we need to do to be able to excel, to expedite our spiritual growth. Prabhupada mentions in 26 Second Avenue. You see, when you have a child and you said, I want you to go and get a PhD. And he said, Baba, I can't even pass my grades nicely in my BA. So I'm not qualified to go for postgraduate studies. Then he says, oh, it's all right. He's not going to put pressure on the child because of the love. He's going to have to do something that is going to help the child to progress. It's going to facilitate a positive change for the child. So it doesn't mean that that standard is the best. So the bottom line is that he wanted something, and in Kali Yoga, in modern Kali Yoga, we're not going to be able to do it. So he brought it down. I mentioned specifically during the first initiation in 26 Second Avenue, the devotees asked him, what is our commitment? He said 64 rounds. And then he said, we cannot. He said, all right, 32. And then he said, well, no, we cannot. He said, 16, minimum. Minimum. Understand the language. So yes, Prabhupada mentioned that if we stay in ISKCON, later, he mentioned that if we stay in ISKCON, follow the regulative principles and do service for the rest of our life, he will facilitate our going back to Godhead. There's no dispute about that. We are talking about what traditionally transpires with these great souls and the example they set for us. Even in ISKCON, there are so many devotees and gurus in ISKCON who don't chant 16 rounds. They chant always. They don't chant 16 rounds and say, I finished my rounds. They're chanting always. True or false?
True, Maharaj.
So, we are saying the same thing. But, what I mentioned about Babaji's instructions to his disciples, that we may not be able to use that, because at that time, I'll give you an example. When Rupa Goswami, during the time of Rupa Goswami, scientists, they were very strict. They won't see a woman. Mira. Have you heard of Mira? Mirabai. Mirabai was in Vrindavan during the time that Rupa Goswami was in Vrindavan. So she wanted to have darshan of Rupa Goswami. A message was sent to Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Goswami, you know what he responded? At that time, people, they were very strict. There are so many stories of the strictness that they were adopting at that time, that if you flip, this, you are gone. So, Rupa Goswami responded that, I'm a Swami, I don't see women. But Mira, very unreserved, messaged back that, I thought Krishna said that we are all Prakriti. He is the only Purusa. So how is it that you don't want to see another Prakriti? Prabhupada mentioned that story. If you're doubting, I can give you the story.
I have heard this story.
Okay. So, they were very strict. But Rupa did not get upset when he got that response. He said, you are right. So the pure souls, they operate on a different platform. What literally could agitate us, they don't get agitated. They embrace it. They operate with what we call in philosophy, flexibility, fallibilistic flexibility. The pure devotees operate with fallibilistic flexibility. It's not like we who say, I am always correct. You are a woman. What is your right to challenge me? Yeah, so Jagannath Das Babaji, he gave these instructions that, to his disciples that apparently they were men. He said, you cannot associate with women. You cannot associate with men who associate with women. You cannot associate with men who associate with men who associate with women. So how are we going to check that? Do you have a way to check that?
I would take that in that sense that don't associate with the person who has a desire for sense gratification, and don't associate with the person who had a friend who has a desire of sense gratification. Not take as a woman sense gratify.
No. You are making an interpretation. I am telling you what he told, the instruction he gave to his disciples. And apparently they were men. They were not an international society for Krishna consciousness where we have children, women, men, old, young. That's my point. It's a different environment. It's a different setting. Do you understand, Prabhu?
Trying, Maharaj.
You see, if you give an instruction to brahmacharis in the ashram, you think that is going to be applicable to a grihastha community? So that's what I'm saying. And in fact, the way you speak to brahmacharis is not the same way you sit on the asana and speak to devotees who are brahmacharis and grihasthas. It's a different. I studied education and philosophy at my master's. And a teacher, an educator must know his audience. What is this audience? What is their need? It's called education and training. Training to be able to preach. When we join a movement, we were trained to preach. We're trained to say what we need to say. Isn't it when you come before a group of people and then you start talking and relegating women and, no. It doesn't work in that way. Does it make some sense? Srila Prabhupada ki?
Jai.
Srimad.
My name? Yes. Okay. Then I can follow on YouTube. I like to read.
Bhakti Vasudeva Swami.
Speaker.
Hare